Rolling, baby.
Oh my God, it's good to be rolling, Adam. Good to see you. Thanks for coming on. I feel like you're just like the perfect guest for this podcast because I feel like you and I had kind of the same trajectory and just like going across the planet, playing the weirdest venues, the crustiest places like ever built, strange, unconventional venues.
You
And
say you say it like it's in the past tense.
yeah, totally. Right off the bat, you've been slogging the road a long time. Any particular highlights of the weirdest places you've ever played?
Oh man. Well, how long do we have? First of all, before Low Cut Connie, I was in a number of bands that, as low rent as Low Cut Connie has been for a long time, my prior bands were even lower rent. So I used to tour all over the US and Europe by myself, right? And I had this box that I would stand on stage and stamp my foot on the box while I played guitar. And at that point I was called Ladyfingers. And with that project, Brett, I used to do like frat parties and potluck dinners. So like I would go on a college campus and they'd have like a house, whether it would be like a fraternity, a sorority, like whatever the event space was. And if I did a good job, they would tell other houses on other college campuses, right? So I did this anarchist group potluck dinner where they would feed homeless people and kind of have like a potluck dinner. And so I played that, and then they told other anarchist houses on different college campuses. So that was interesting because I would sleep on the floor at these places with the homeless people that would get a place to stay for the night and a meal. And so I would be sleeping with those people, which was always an adventure. And those gigs I would do basically for food, you know. I played, and I used to play piano, Brett, in ballet classes. So is that a gig? Does that count?
Sure.
The first job, the first like steady paying gig that I ever had was when I turned 21. There was a bar in Manhattan called Pegasus. There was a drag karaoke bar, and I was the piano player. I used to play there 2 or 3 nights a week. And that place was just crazy. Like there was no sign. There was just like a picture of a winged Pegasus in the door. And they would have nudist night. And I would have to play piano for nudist night.
Nice.
And it was just a crazy place. I don't want to say I saw a lot of things with my eyeballs in that place. And then,
Do tell, do tell.
I mean, just I learned about life, you know. I learned that this world that we see every day is only a fraction of the world that exists, you know, and that I could get on the subway and go to this place and knock on the door and go, and somebody would let me in, and there I'd be entering a world where maybe people would be wearing clothes, maybe they would not. The maitre d' was this little Chinese guy that dressed up like Tina Turner or Patti LaBelle, and they had basically these booths downstairs that were like, there was like a sex trade going on downstairs, and then there was like the drug dealer guy in the back, and it was just fascinating. And if I walked in there and I looked great, I knew it because it was like flies to honey. And if I walked in there a little bit disheveled, or like if you could see a t-shirt underneath my collared shirt, which is just not a good look, the whole night I would hear endlessly about it, and they try to change me. So I learned about how to entertain, like choose the right song for the right music, the right song for the right person, set the tone in the room correctly, look right, be funny. If they want to talk, listen. If it's a sad situation, cry with them. Like, ride the waves with your audience. Basically, I learned in that place.
So are you, as you're playing, are these like 3 hour power sets?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes 4 or 5 hours.
Damn.
Just quick little bathroom breaks. In the gay bar circuit that I used to do, it used to basically be, I think at Pegasus, I think I got like a base of like $200 cash to play for 4 hours. But on a good night, like when I would do a Saturday night, I could make like $400 or $500 in tips.
Nice. And this is, what is this, 2009 or?
I started there in 2001.
Okay, so that's big money. 2001.
Yeah, I used to like get on the subway back to Queens with like sometimes $700 in a lot of ones in my pocket, like, and those were good gigs. I mean, it sounds crusty. It was crusty, but those were great nights. I had men in those places that loved my music, that loved me, that they would show up to see me and sing that song again. I love when you do that Nina Simone thing. I love when you do that Elvis thing. I had some admirers. When I really went out into the wilderness is when I started to tour Ladyfingers all over the country and overseas, and no one knew me. See, this is the part of touring, Brett, that I feel like is maybe lost on a younger generation now, which is just going out on the road and finding places to play music just to do it, not to promote yourself, not to make money, not to build your following online, just to do it. That's where I was coming from. And so I was putting myself in situations with strangers, with in some cases hostile audiences that didn't know me from anything. I would get up, I would go to England, for instance, and go to like a pub that would have me and get up in the middle of the pub with a guitar and just sing. And it's the scariest thing in the world. You could absolutely eat shit, or you could win over a bar full of people. And none of it, Brett, was to become famous or to really build a career. It was the thrill of it. It was the art of it. The art of live performance is something I've always been addicted to, whether I got paid to do it or not. If somebody in San Diego would call me in Philadelphia and say, "Oh, do you want to play in our bar, 3 weeks from now on a Sunday night for 30 minutes, I would drive there. I would just for $50. I wanted so badly to play, and I wasn't thinking business. I wasn't thinking career building. I was just thinking I want to do it,
That is really, I mean, I don't know any other way to become good as a live performer, is like going out, cutting your teeth, playing in places where you have zero home court advantage, just, to hostile drunks that maybe want to hate you or whatever. I mean, how else do you get good? How else do you learn how to handle hecklers and learn how to engineer a set list and, handle wrenches or off kilter moments in the set? That seems like the only way to do it.
Of which there were countless awful, awful gigs where I bombed. I mean, I bombed more than I hit for those years.
What was your mental health like? Because I remember going out for 3 months at a time, DIY tours across Europe, a lot of garbage shows, wildly inefficient, great times, great freedom, amazing highs, incredible moments, but just catatonic loneliness and depressions. Did that hit you at all, or was that something you were just kind of immune to?
No, it did. But you know, you bring up the point of how performing to hostile audiences and strange audiences makes you a better performer. And part of it is you got to face it, right? When you get on stage, you can't hide. You got to face your audience. Whoever they are, whatever they are, wherever you are, you got to face them at face value, wherever they're at. You got to look them in the eyes and you got to do your job. Well, the same thing is true of the road in general. The loneliness, the isolation, the just absolute numbing quality of traveling alone for weeks on end with very little reward. You got to face that too.
Yep.
Right? You got to take it right on and learn how the fuck to do it. You know, and I think I was absolutely a glutton for punishment. I wanted to learn how to do it all.
Yeah, I relate to that so much.
I would go on like a 9-week solo tour, which, by the way, I would book through MySpace and email myself.
Oh, yeah.
Like this was like, I would look up, okay, I'm going to be in Bozeman, Montana. And the next day I could get to Milwaukee or something. Let me just find some random dive bar that maybe will have me, right? That's how you would string it together. And, you know, I put it all together. I do like 9 weeks alone, sometimes sleeping in a car, sometimes sleeping on somebody's couch, some sketchy fucking person, sometimes, you know, at the venue, or, you know, somebody says you can come stay with us, whatever the situation was, sketchy situation. I would do it for 9 weeks and be completely broken when I would get back, right? Like,
Of course, yeah.
physically, my voice, emotionally, everything just fucking broken. And then I would sleep for a couple days and I'd be like booking the next one.
Oh, God, you're speaking to my life entirely. Because you get home and you're like, and it's kind of like this with any big project. It's like you work so long and so hard to make it happen. And then all of a sudden you see the light at the end of the tunnel of it ending, and you're like afraid of the light at the end of the tunnel, when really it should be like a moment of like great celebration and victory. You get home, you're like, you should be like, oh, revelry. I just did this thing that's so hard. But instead you're like, let's run through the gauntlet again. Let's book another tour.
What's interesting is, and I'm kind of thankful for this, social media was much less of a factor at the point when I was doing these alone tours.
Mm-hmm.
MySpace was around, but that was a very different platform. Facebook was just beginning, but it wasn't very popular yet, and I wasn't on it in those early days. And so you didn't have those promotional tools, but you also didn't have the psychological mind fuck of those apps that measure everything in data, right? So you didn't have the, well, how many followers do I have? Did my followers go up? Can I network with these people through social media to come to my show? And, oh, I'm doing LA, and let me see if I can get all these industry people. You know, it was off the grid in a way, and you just did it. I just did it to do it. And occasionally there'd be a random moment that would remind me of the real music industry. You know, like maybe somebody was at my show that said, hey, I work with a record label, or I know a booking agent, or my friend is in this band, or whatever. or like I did South by Southwest and North by Northeast Festival in Canada. I did, little CMJ where I would sort of see a little bit of what the music industry was.
Yep.
But I was not a part of it. I was on the outside of it, and I had no idea how to get into it. And so I just kept doing the circuit that I was doing, which was dive bars and just the bottom of the live music world.
The toilet bowl circuit. Oh yeah, I've been there.
And now that I'm in the music business to such a degree, I miss that stuff to a degree because there's a purity to it. Like if I could get up in a really crappy bar and play music and really make people feel it and happy or dancing or making out or crying, whatever the response I could get, there was a purity to it. There was
nothing at stake.
Nothing at stake. There was no ticket buying. There was no self-promotion. There was no, oh, maybe this guy will sign me. There was no, oh, maybe they'll follow me and then we'll network. There was none of that. And I missed that. I missed that a bit, and occasionally dip back into that just to remind myself of why I got into playing music in the first place.
Of course. I mean, those gigs are always there for you, Adam. If you ever want to take a swift beating to the soul, you know?
Well, I do. This is one of the reasons why I break up my Low Cut Connie full band tours seasonally with solo concerts, because when I do solo concerts, I play much different venues and I get to really eyeball to eyeball with people. Like I did a gig a couple years ago in a bowling alley in Minneapolis and just hung out and bowled with people. Like I miss that kind of hang aspect of it, which is hard to do if you're playing the Fillmore or First Avenue or the Troubadour or something,
Well, yeah, I mean, congrats on playing those places. I mean, what is the lead up? How does your mind feel in the lead up to a show? Because I can speak to, like, a lot of times I'm like really, I can be kind of miserable leading up to going on stage, and like not in an ungrateful way, but in like just a kind of an anxiety fest, and just waiting for something to happen. Hurry up and wait. Are you just amped leading into a show, or what does that feel like in your brain? Because I've had some low moments on the lead up.
Fortunately, I do not suffer from what they used to call stage fright, and I guess what you would call performance anxiety.
Yeah, like it's like pre-stage fright or something. When I get up there, I feel it feels great,
I do not suffer from the pre-show jitters. I don't get the pre-show jitters. In fact, I have anxiety and mental health stuff in my day-to-day life. But when I get into the performing part of my life, unless there are major curveballs that come around, like God forbid being ill or some really adverse set of circumstances, a hostile audience, generally I'm pretty locked in and I feel pretty zen before the show. I don't get hype. I'm not like super excited, and I'm not scared either. I'm just kind of ready for the job.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a big contrast to how sometimes I get tweaked out over life off stage, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, it seems like stage is kind of like your most comfortable space on the planet. What is some of these kind of mental battles you deal with in day-to-day life? What does that look like?
Well, I have been open with my fans at different points about my struggle with depression over the years. Since I'm about 13, I've had my ups and my downs, and right now I'm doing pretty well. Um, but there's definitely been periods over the years where I was not mentally doing well over a long period of time. I've had some uh, pharmacological adventures, and uh, I had a situation a couple years ago where I basically had a complete breakdown. I was on a medication, um, an antidepressant that just completely didn't agree with me. I've been on a few, but this particular one just absolutely um, destroyed my brain chemistry for about 6, 7 months.
Damn, yeah.
And I had what's called serotonin syndrome, and I was in bad shape, really bad shape. So I was not um, functional off stage. I was having trouble driving and getting to where I needed to go and picking out something to eat. I was just really not in a good functional place. But then I would get on stage, Brett, and the spirit would take over and I'd be right there, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man, I relate to that. But yeah, the fact that it was like 6 months long of just kind of catatonic. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it went through phases. There was a catatonic kind of phase. Then there was a extreme anxiety, no sleep, can't eat phase, and everything in between. As my brain chemistry readjusted over 6 to 7 months. Now I'm through the door now, but I never canceled the show during that whole time. I also tore my Achilles in the midst of that on tour in Europe. And the combination of those two things was just very disorienting, you know.
Can you often cite the catalyst to why you're bluesy or depressed? Like, are there any commonalities or common variables that kind of lead to that?
Well, yeah, I have my triggers, but I guess if you suffer from, for me, depression is like, relates to a kind of existential dread, you know?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And so there are moments in life that make you feel like it's just not worth it. What I'm doing is not worth it. Or maybe I'm not, all that I've done, all the work I've done is for nothing. Or I'm not, you know, nothing means what it should mean, you know? And you look at other people that take such great meaning from simple things, and you say, well, why can't I feel that kind of joy watching that very stupid film, or walking in the park? You see joy on people's face or whatever. And why can't I access that? And so those things are kind of always at the door. And it takes a lot of practice to actually learn how to, for me, to learn how to find joy in my day-to-day life. If it doesn't come naturally, you have to kind of practice, like figure out how to do it. And that's something I've gotten better at, is, you know, I've been like a city dweller most of my life, and I didn't grow up around nature very much, and I've never been oriented much to nature. I'm allergic to fucking everything, you know. But I've learned recently that when I go out into the woods or to the beach, I jog on the beach, I go for long walks in a forest or whatever, like, it legitimately makes me feel good. And that's something I discovered like when I was 40, you know. Um, and so I've sort of learned, I've had to pay attention to what actually will make me feel good and focus my energy there when I'm off stage, if that makes sense. So I've gotten better at just taking care of myself, I guess.
Yeah, that's so huge. I mean, I relate to that so much. I feel like I'm just kind of climbing out of a rut myself, and it gets so frustrating when it's like you are making those offensive plays against your own blues, where you're like, okay, I am exercising, I'm going out in nature, I'm biking my ass off, I'm not boozing, and you still feel like the existential dread, and it's like, holy fuck, like where to go from here? But it is always temporary, like the clouds always do part. And it's just, yeah, there are those days where it's like, speaking personally, where it's like I have to spend the whole day on the bike or the whole day outside working out or doing something, or it's just like it's such a climb back to the top some days, you know. It's like such a
Yeah.
fucking climb back to the back to normalcy.
Yeah. I've recalibrated my understanding of why I'm a workaholic as well, and how important it is to me to have business to take care of.
Oh, totally, man.
And
Totally.
I'm trying to do it in a healthy way, but I have a deeper appreciation of what my music and performing life has done for me to keep me going in life. And that's why I think I've been able to spread that to other people. Why I can play music and make other people feel good is I have a deeper understanding about how it's been sustaining to me, if you know what I mean, through life.
Yeah. And I love that you've had like no plan B with it, at least from what I've heard from you speaking in podcasts and stuff. It's just like, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to do it. Nothing's going to stop me. I don't care if it takes 40 years. This is the game plan. I'll work whatever shitty side job I have to keep it going. And
Of which
that's
I've
beautiful.
had many. Of
Yeah,
which I've
tell
had
me
many.
some of the funniest shitty jobs.
Oh my God. Well, I mean, I was a secretary in a doctor's office for 3 years.
That's heavy.
I was such a bad secretary. Can you imagine me? Like, I was awful, but um, eventually they asked me to become the office manager of this practice in Manhattan. So this is like a very high end physician right off of Central Park in Manhattan. This is
Mhm.
like a multi-million dollar business, right? Doctor's practice. I am the secretary, and I am wearing a white lab coat, and I'm greeting all these patients. And it was a combination of like uh, pro bono healthcare and very high end cash, very, very wealthy people healthcare, right? So I was dealing with really, really rich people paying out of pocket for this physician, but then he did all this pro bono work for HIV patients. So it was such an array. And after a couple of years, they said, we really would like you to be the office manager, and we'll give you all these benefits and everything. And I was 25, 24, and I had a total crisis of conscience. Like, if I take this job, I've got a really good salary, I've got benefits, but then I guess I'm not a musician at all anymore.
Mm.
Do you know?
The point of no return, Adam.
So I actually quit. They offered me a promotion, and then I quit. I worked for the 9/11 Foundation doing stress workshops. I did that for a year, which basically was like, because I lived in New York during 9/11, I would go into the Bronx to all these public schools and do stress workshops with kids, and then stress workshops after school with their teachers. And it had to do with the trauma of 9/11 and getting people to acknowledge how they were feeling, that their stress levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was really, actually, when I think about it, that job was probably the one that I liked the best, that I feel like was the most relevant to what I do now, is trying to get people to access how they feel, basically. I worked in a vintage clothing store for a while. I did a phone banking thing for the New York Philharmonic. I tuned pianos off of Craigslist. I taught piano lessons, vocal lessons. What else did I do? So many. And then eventually, Brett, when I decided that music wasn't going to happen for me, when I was about 28, 29, 30, I took a teaching job that was like kind of a more serious job. My friend ran this program of tutoring and homeschooling in Manhattan. And I took the job, and it was like, they'll start you at $60 an hour. And then after a certain amount of time, 75 an hour. And after a certain amount of time, $125 an hour. And it was like a legit job. And I thought, okay, well, I'll do music on the weekends and the summers. And after I started doing that job, 2.5 minutes later, Low Cut Connie began. And I was already 30, 31, and had already decided that it wasn't going to happen. And that's when it did happen, basically. That's when it started to happen. And I had to reevaluate for a second time. See, I'd already done the mental work of realizing that I had to get a full-time day job and put music on the back burner and become sort of a weekend warrior.
Yeah.
I'd already kind of started to accept it. And then Low Cut Connie starts, and then all this stuff starts to happen with the band very, very unexpectedly and very quickly. And I had to reevaluate it.
Like, what were those things that were happening that kind of all of a sudden you're on the outside of the music industry, and then all of a sudden you're starting to get on the inside and things are taking off?
Well, I lived in New York City the first time, 1998 to 2006. And those were my years of trying to be an artist, right? And then I left, and I came back in 2010 as a working stiff, as a teacher. It's like, I'm moving back here. I have this job offer. And I wasn't moving back to New York to be an artist. I was moving there for a different kind of career. And then my art life came and wrecked my professional life again. And basically, what, in the shortest nutshell, Low Cut Connie, which was this little tiny side project with my friends. It was not my main. I was doing Ladyfingers as my band. And this little side project that I did with my buddies, I sent that CD of Low Cut Connie to Robert Christgau. Do you know Robert Christgau?
Oh.
He's a famous music critic, legendary music critic, Village Voice.
Okay.
And he reviewed the album, and he said it was one of the best albums of the year, and then passed it along to Rolling Stone magazine, and they reviewed it in the magazine. And that was a big deal in 2011.
Oh, wow. So you caught the very tail end of the music industry, as like we knew it, as like where journalists could make or break you.
Well, exactly. So basically, it went from Robert Christgau to Rolling Stone. And then I was able to, over that summer, get it to Guitar World, USA Today, and then Fresh Air with Terry Gross on NPR did a 7-minute story about it, prime time, in October, I think it was. that ran twice, and that was life changing because a couple million people heard that show, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of CD sales in my inbox because I was mailing CDs from my apartment. Not to speak of the digital, because at that point we weren't streaming yet. We were still with iTunes.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I had like fans. And so, a kind of manager person pops up here, a manager there, maybe an agent starts sniffing around, record label starts to check us out. We start to do shows in New York, and 100 people buy tickets to the show. They know the words of the songs. Start getting calls like, do you want to do a show in California? Do you want to do a show in Chicago? Stuff like that. Just enough, Brett, to bring me back in. And one thing I knew, Brett, at that age, at 31, I knew this is my shot. It's my first and last shot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm either going to focus on this and make this come true right now, or just stop, because the universe is not going to give you another opportunity. And so it was like a switch flipped in my brain, and all of the willful ignorance that I had had about the music industry in my 20s turned into an absolute ninja of student of the music industry in my 30s.
Mm.
I became as obsessive in my 20s as I was about performing over and over and over and over again and learning how to perform. I became obsessive about learning how to manage, promote, and book this band, Low Cut Connie. I learned how to be a publicist, a radio promoter, a booker, everything. And built the band over the decade in this very DIY way. Such that by, I think, when I was 35, despite the fact that I had quite a lot of debt at this point because of the band, despite the fact that at that point already a dozen people had come in and out of the band, I decided to quit my day job completely and focus on and make the band happen as a full-time endeavor.
Yeah, well, much respect. I mean, you need those little boosts, those little like morale boosters to kind of keep you around. It's like, and that's just a testament to sticking around. It's like sometimes it feels like you're just on a long stretch where not much is happening, but I think all those hours do pay off if you hang around long enough.
Well, now it's paying off now. Like now is the first time in my life that we have 20 something cities where we can go and sell a lot of tickets and sell.
It's also, that's a testament to side projects too, because it's like, you kind of like, I mean, at least speaking from my personal experience, it's like I feel like I have no time to do side missions, and just to keep the band on the road and keep making a living. But actually, Butch Vig was on the pod not too long ago, and he was saying, don't get hung up on the marketing, what you're going to do with it. Just make something, release it, and then move on. Because I think that's a big hang up a lot of people have. I think with just art in general is like people are afraid to show it, and thus retroactively afraid to finish it because they're like, no one's going to listen or whatever. But I think it's just...
Yeah, I like what you're saying. And I like that advice because at the end of the day, Brett, like marketing is what it is, but good music is what we're here to do. And good music to me is music that resonates with people, right? And when you're thinking from a marketing perspective or a trend perspective, you're not going to make your best art. And so the side project concept is one in which the stakes are just lower, you know, and you do this kind of little fuck around thing. And the fuck around thing is where you actually maybe do your best work because you're exploring artistically and you're not thinking about the career. And Low Cut Connie was the side project that had absolutely no career ambitions whatsoever. And then a couple years ago, I did another I did this again, which is my Tough Cookies project, my live stream broadcast during the pandemic. That was my side project that sort of took over my career for a while, because I was having so much fun. And it opened up doors that had never been open to me because of the purity of what we were doing artistically.
Yeah, you almost have to trick yourself into having nothing to lose. You know what I mean? Like, then there's no pressure. Then it's fun. And I think when things are fun, especially when art's fun, it's a beautiful thing. Not just the end product, but it's fully medicinal and fully therapeutic, which is a cliche to say, but it's true. You know?
Yeah, like I know the difference between when I have to practice music for something that I have to do, and when I'm completely out at sea by myself exploring. There are two different practices, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And if I'm doing like a concert that's like a charity event where I have to learn these 4 songs that I have to sing, somebody else's songs, I enjoy that task because I really like doing a job and doing it well. But there's a world away from that and songwriting, which is not something, to me, it's a sacred thing. It's not for anyone else. It's just between me and myself.
How many songs do you have like sitting around in the song graveyard that you haven't used?
Too many. I mean, I'm lucky in that I'm one of these people that kind of walks around with a pocket full at all times. But not to the extent of Prince or something, but I have entire album length collections of songs that won't see the light of day.
Sure. What about one of your antics on stage is like it's kind of like you're at some point in the show you'll probably tear your shirt off. When did that come into play? What was the first time of that happening?
I mean, if you knew me when I was younger, you would never believe that I would be one of the people somebody that would do that. I still can't believe I do it. And I don't plan it. It just kind of happens sometimes. And I think, Brett, it's like people like you and me get to live in a fantasy world where we get to be the people that we want to be for a show. But in my opinion, I get to be the purest version of myself. See, when I'm on the street and in my daily life, I'm shy, I'm neurotic, I'm anxious, socially awkward at times. But when I'm on stage, I'm so locked in. It's unbelievable. And it's to the point of the inhibitions. I can't even remember what they are. And so I get this crazy feeling of freedom on stage that in some cases leads to my clothes coming off. In some cases, it leads to the audience's clothes coming off. Like, it's just this cathartic release, you know? and it's not contrived. It only happens if it's totally organic in the moment. But the first time I saw photographs or video of myself doing something like that, I had, because I got imposter syndrome. I'm like, I have no idea who that person is.
Yeah, well, it's a great pro wrestling move, if nothing else.
Listen, I'm a child of the '80s, so you know.
Oh man. So you've done every part of the music business yourself at some point, the booking, the performing, the design, the publicity work. What's the point of the music business day-to-day admin that you don't like or you like the least?
Thankfully, now I have a great team that handles so much for me.
But if you had to delegate one thing first, what do you go with?
Social media, it doesn't come, certain aspects of social media just don't come naturally to me because socializing doesn't always come easy to me. And younger generation of artists have such an immense instinct for self-promotion. Like the generation I'm from, it wasn't cool to promote yourself.
No way. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, sure.
Like in my early bands, we would have flyers or postcards for our upcoming show, and we would fight over whose turn it was to go hand out flyers because nobody wanted to do it. It wasn't cool. And you weren't supposed to look like you were trying to succeed.
Yeah.
And now we live in an era where people are promoting themselves and getting quite a big following. And in some cases, they don't even have a song out. Or maybe it's just a piece of a song or something. And I don't criticize that. That's the culture we are in now. There's pros and cons, Self-promotion just doesn't come naturally to me. I know how to put a show together. I know how to sing. I know how to play piano. I know how to write songs. But hey, guys, come check out the show. Hey, guys, go buy the album. It doesn't come naturally to me. All I know is how to make an album that I'm proud of. So that would be the first thing. And I do delegate that a decent amount. I've learned how to do it a bit, but it's not natural for me.
Anything you want to steer people to? I think you're going out on the road. You're doing some pretty nice big theaters. I think this tour, it's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's the Art Dealers tour. My Art Dealers album comes out September 8th, and we've already put out a couple of the songs. And the big tour starts the night before in Boston on September 7th. And I think we're doing 25 to 30 shows this fall. We're doing a 6-show residency at the Blue Note in Manhattan, which I'm very excited about. And Chicago, Minneapolis, Burlington, Portland, Maine, Louisville, Milwaukee, everywhere in between. And then, Brett, I'm really excited to say that we have a film coming out. I made a film called Art Dealers that's going to premiere at a couple festivals this fall. And then we're working on a release plan for next year for the film. And the film really captures our live show really well and life on the road. So just basically trying to stay healthy and get as many people into the room, because the more people are in the room, the more powerful these shows are.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope to see a lot of people this fall at these Art Dealer shows. Are going to be pretty special.
Thanks, Adam. Well, man, I love you. I love your ethos. Love your work ethic. Love how you're doing things. Very inspiring. I'm going to go make a side project now.
Please do, brother. And all the best to you. Thank you for having me on here and thinking of me. And yeah, I'll see you down the road, somewhere out there on the road.
Anytime, Adam. See you in Milwaukee. Adam, Low Cut Connie, Dirt from the Road. Much love, much respect. Thanks for listening.
Shoot.